Hello and welcome to the Joe Cannon Health Podcast. I am Joe Cannon and this is episode number 11. And in this episode, I want to do things a wee bit differently than I've done before. Instead of covering one topic, I want to give you four different topics, four different health news headlines that have crossed my computer screen either recently or, in the case of one topic, something I've been covering on my own for over a year that I want to bring to your attention in hopes that you'll share it with other people and hopefully give you some things to think about. Now, before we get into these four health headlines that I want to discuss in this episode, let's look at the myth of the week. And this one, again, is a biggie that I think most people, unfortunately, still think is true. And that's the idea that we can lose body fat from just one part of our body at a time. The idea here is, for instance, if you do a lot of sit-ups, you'll lose body fat from your abs. In fact, this myth is the reason, probably, for the promotion of pretty much every ab gizmo you've ever seen on television. The same story goes for if people are trying to lose body fat, say, in the triceps area behind the arms. If you just do a lot of tricep exercise, you'll lose weight from there. I'm here to tell you that there's not one shred of evidence for any of this stuff. We do not do what is called spot reduction. Spot reduction is the idea that we can lose body fat from just one part of the area of our body, and that's actually not true. We can spot build, we can build muscle in just one area of the body, but we can't just spot reduce, can't just lose body fat from one part of the body. Now, and again, it makes sense intuitively when you think about it, because if this really were true, if you really could just lose body fat from one part of the body, we would expect to see lower body fats in the dominant arms of, say, baseball pitchers and tennis players. They use one arm more than another, and we don't see less body fat in these athletes. So again, even beyond that, there's scientists have looked at this and there's not one shred of evidence. You just don't lose body fat from one part of the body. Again, you can build the muscle in that area, but you can't lose body fat from that area. Now, as an aside, I will say that this myth of spot reduction is used in some fitness centers to sell gym memberships. And I say this because when I'm working out at different gyms, I'll take a look sometimes at the salespeople who give tours of the facility to prospective members. And I've noticed over the years that when salespeople are giving a tour to a woman, that they always make it a point to show the woman the inner and outer thigh machines. You've seen these machines in gyms. These are the machines where you sit in them and you either squeeze your legs together or you push your legs apart. The idea here is if you do enough repetitions with these machines that you'll lose weight from the inner and outer thighs, which again, there's no evidence of this. You can build the muscles in the inner thighs and outer thighs. That's true, but you can't lose fat from just those areas. You lose them all over the body at the same time. The inner thighs, the outer thighs, the calves, behind your earlobes, your little pinky, etc. So, it's great marketing by these salespeople, and so kudos to them, but unfortunately, biology does not work that way. So, myth busted, spot reduction, total myth, don't believe it. Anybody that says it's true and are trying to sell an ab gizmo on late night TV or early morning TV, don't believe it. There's no evidence for it. Okay, so much for the myth of the week. Let's now look at these four health headlines that I think are quite interesting, and you may be surprised by some of them. The first story I want to talk about involves a very popular pain medication that you may have in your house right now. This medication may be linked to a loss of empathy. Empathy is defined as our ability to understand and share feelings with another person. What is that medication, you may be asking? Well, you know it better as Tylenol. Clinically, it's called acetaminophen. Acetaminophen, Tylenol are the same thing. And there are two studies that appear to show it may reduce empathy in human beings. First study came out in 2016, and the title of the study is actually kind of interesting. From painkiller to empathy killer, acetaminophen reduces empathy for pain. So what's going on here? These researchers recruited 80 college students, and they gave them either a placebo or 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen, or Tylenol, as we often call it here in America. And then an hour later, they had these students read short stories about people who were experiencing psychological distress or physical pain, and then they had them fill out questionnaires. And interestingly, these researchers noted that compared to the placebo group, those individuals who were taking 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen had reduced empathy. They didn't empathize so much with the people in the stories they were reading. Interesting. Okay, so that's one study. This year, 2019, those same researchers did the same study again. This is a little bit of a larger study, 114 college students. This study, again, has basically an interesting title, A Social Analgesic. Acetaminophen reduces positive empathy. Again, we've got 114 college students. They are split randomly into two groups. One group gets 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen. Other group gets a placebo. 1 hour later, they have everybody read stories about people going through uplifting experiences, having happy thoughts and stuff like that. Happy themes to them. And just like before, compared to the placebo group, those people taking the acetaminophen, the Tylenol, reported significantly less pleasure when they were imagining their feelings during these uplifting stories that they were reading. So what the heck is going on? It's theorized that the acetaminophen may affect parts of the brain in ways that reduce not only our perception to pain, but also our ability to emotionally share and be empathetic with other people during pleasurable or painful experiences. That's the theory anyway. Now, here's what we don't know. What we don't know is how long does this empathy dampening effect last? Again, is it a week? Is it a month? Is it a year? 6 months? All these studies appear to show that about an hour after taking Tylenol, these individuals seem to have less empathy. Again, we don't know how long this effect may last. And also, I would point out that these are two human studies that do appear to show the same thing. I would like one more study, again, just to find out, get 3 data points to see if the same thing might happen. That's one of my rules of thumb. But again, I like the fact they're human studies. I do appreciate that they both seem to find the same thing, but I would like to see another study and also see how long this effect might last. Now, my take on all this is that, before you start thinking that, Tylenol is going to turn us all into a bunch of sociopaths, let's think about this for a moment. How much Tylenol have you taken in your life? How does your empathy feel? I can tell you from me that I've taken my share of Tylenol over the course of my life, and I don't view myself as being a sociopath. Definitely don't view myself as, I don't view myself as a sociopath, but I also don't see myself as being not empathetic to other people as well. So if this is a real effect, if it is a real bona fide effect, then it may be that the empathy dampening effect of acetaminophen may not last very long. Again, we need more research to know for sure. That's just something that occurred to me as I was looking over these studies. So again, take it for what it is. And if you've tried Tylenol, you'd notice any difference in your personality, etc. Drop me an email. Let me know. I'm curious. This is a very intriguing set of studies here. I'm looking forward to a third study, and when it comes out, I will absolutely report more about it here. Okay, so much for Tylenol. This next story that I want to talk about, I think is more disturbing for most people. I've titled it High Blood Pressure Drug Recalls. In episode number 5, I addressed a whole bunch of ways to naturally lower blood pressure. So if you missed episode 5, go back and take a listen to that. I covered a lot of topics that maybe you haven't thought of or heard of before, but that's really not what I want to talk about here. That's natural ways. A lot of people are taking blood pressure medications because they have high blood pressure. Well, for over a year now, I have been noticing something interesting. I've been noticing recall after recall after recall of blood pressure medicines, specifically blood pressure medicines called losartan and valsartan. And why are they being recalled? Well, they are being found to contain low levels of potentially cancer-causing compounds. Now, these potentially causing compounds, they have extremely long names, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce them, but I'll just give you their acronyms in case you want to look them up for yourself. The cancer-causing substances go by the acronyms NMDA, NDMA, and NDEA, NMDA, NDMA, and NDEA. Again, these are compounds that, again, some preliminary studies, mostly laboratory animals and some test tube studies, appear to show these things can increase the risk of a variety of cancers. And I just don't want to throw the blood pressure drugs under the bus, as you would say, because as I recorded this episode today, I saw yet another recall, not on a blood pressure drug, but on a popular anti-ulcer drug called Zantac. Again, for the same reason, being contaminated with one of the substances called NDMA. So what the heck is going on? Why all of a sudden have there been all these recalls of these drugs? Well, apparently there seems to be a breakdown in the manufacturing processes of drug ingredients. Now, I think this is a symptom of a larger problem because what most people in America do not appear to realize, and no, I was one of them until recently, is that U.S. drug companies often do not get the ingredients for those drugs in America. Rather, they get them from outside in other countries. China, in particular, has been an ever-growing maker of the ingredients of both brand-name drugs and generic drugs, the ingredients that go into brand-name drugs and generic drugs. And one of the thing that really opened my eyes, one thing that really opened my eyes was a podcast that I like to listen to, so I don't mind giving them props. That's the People's Pharmacy podcast. If you haven't ever listened to the People's Pharmacy podcast, I'd recommend you do because it's a really good podcast. But they have, over at least for a year that I've been aware of, started reporting on all these drug recalls. And then I started noticing them on television, and I also get some FDA updates from the FDA, the email updates, and I started paying closer attention to them. Now, what I would say is that one book that I would recommend you read about all this stuff, because it is very complicated and disturbing, and the book that I think everybody in America needs to be reading is a book called China RX, and it is essentially what it is. It's what it sounds like. We have been outsourcing the manufacturing of a lot of drug ingredients to China for a long time. The China RX book goes on to say that China now makes the raw materials for a variety of medications, such as antibiotics, cancer drugs, HIV drugs, birth control pills, and a whole bunch of other medicines. And this has been going on for years, right under our noses. We haven't even known about this until fairly recently. One of the things that jumped out at me when I read that book was that the United States does not even make penicillin anymore. Are you kidding me? A drug that's been around over 100 years, we don't even make it anymore. The ingredients come from China now, unfortunately. Even more troubling is the book reports that even the Veterans Administration, the VA, has obtained medical supplies from China. That is a huge problem in my book. One pharmacy executive that was quoted in a China RX book said this: China now makes so many drug ingredients that if it ever stopped exporting them, the world's pharmacies would dry up within a matter of months. That is very disturbing. It should be disturbing to anybody who takes medications that we get so many drug ingredients from one company. Again, I think this is a problem, not just from the fact that we're putting all our eggs in the China basket, but I find it troubling from another standpoint, and that's that I think this poses a national security risk. Think about this for a moment. How can America defend itself from a country, a communist country, by the way, that wields so much power over us? Again, I don't want to get political about this. This is not a political podcast, and I know we all have different feelings on this, but Think about this for a moment. They make so much of the ingredients for so many of these medications. China has the world's largest army and the third largest navy. If there ever were a conflict down the road between us and them, America would be at a disadvantage. Think about it. The very medicines that our soldiers would need to help fight a war will be coming from the country that we're doing battle with. That is a huge problem, and it is an issue for national security that I'm hoping our government will address. All these recalls on blood pressure drugs and other calls, I think they really need to be a wake-up call to pharmacy executives and also the American people. Again, we need to start in my opinion, we need to start making medications and the ingredients of medications back in America again. Again, I'm not trying to be a right-winger or anything like that. I'm just afraid that, again, we're putting so much of our hopes onto just one country. I'd feel much better if we spread it out over a whole bunch of other countries: America, UK, Canada, Mexico, China, okay, Vietnam, whatever. But again, so many things coming from just one country. I think that's a problem, and I think we need to take a look at that. And again, I know I can't be the only person who's been thinking about this. I know the people who run pharmaceutical companies are intelligent. They are very intelligent people. And with that in mind, I just wonder, during the board meetings when they were talking about outsourcing stuff to other countries, did it ever occur to them that doing so much business with one country could be bad for our national security down the road? I'm just throwing this out to people. Again, I have no inside information on any of this, but again, I would think that this topic would have come up. Again, fortunately, this is finally starting to get the attention of other people. This is not relegated to podcasts. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have probably seen the TV news segment videos that I've been posting when this topic does pop up on mainstream media, if you will. I do take video of this with my phone and upload it to Instagram and Facebook so people can take a look at it. If you haven't seen any of this, I mean, I'm sure some of it's on YouTube, but if you follow me on Instagram, I'm just Joe Cannon MS on Instagram, so I'm pretty easy to find. But again, whether we get this stuff from China or not, I think the larger issue now is that what the heck can we do about it? And honestly, I don't have any answers for this. I think this has been going on for a long time. A lot of drug companies have bases over in China. They do business with them over there. It's going to take a lot of effort to pull them out of China and bring them back to America or move them to other countries. And I don't know how to do that. I don't have any easy answers. Again, I don't mean to bloviate either about this and go off on a tangent, but I find this very disturbing. I do believe America is a great country, and I'm glad I live here. And I'm glad, a lot of you live here as well. And I want to see America survive and thrive in the 21st century. And I don't know. I just have an issue with doing so much business with a communist country. Not to say that these drug contaminations are purposeful. They're not. But it's a breakdown of the quality control of what's going on over there. And, quality control notwithstanding, I think that's an issue. But I'd rather not do business with them, with the Chinese government as much as we are. A little bit, okay, but not as much as we are. So what I'll do is I'm going to put a link to the China RX book in the show notes for this episode, which will be on my website, joe-cannon.com. I recommend everybody read this book. It is the most fascinating book I've read in a very long time. And as fascinating as it is equally disturbing. I think everybody should be reading this book. So again, do check it out. I think you will be very intrigued with what the book has to say. So if you're, saying to yourself, wow, big pharma, they've sold us out, etc. Okay, well, you can say that. Again, I think they're just trying to get the best cost for what their product is. And that leads us into the third installment for this episode, and that is, do you know where your dietary supplements are made? So I decided to include this segment in the episode after seeing a report on Bloomberg Law that was titled "Chinese Vitamin C Price Fixing Case Could Alter U.S. Drug Market." Essentially, Chinese companies that are making vitamin C were trying to control the price of vitamin C, that they are exporting vitamin C out to other countries, and they wanted to control that price so that they could make more money from the companies companies that buy vitamin C from them. Again, why would you say this may be a problem? I think it's a problem because I think it, again, is a symptom of a much larger issue, and that's the fact that most dietary supplement ingredients also come from China. So it's not just the medications that we're talking about, but the ingredients that go into dietary supplements. Many of these ingredients also do come from China. And again, I don't want you to confuse the supplement with the ingredients, because if you run into your kitchen right now and you take a look at the supplements you take, you're going to see that it'll probably say something like, made in America, or it may actually give you the state and an address where it's made. The supplement may be manufactured in America, but where do those ingredients come from? Many of them now come from China. As a matter of fact, that China RX book I mentioned in a previous segment, they had noted that 60% of all the ascorbic acid in the whole world, that's vitamin C, comes from China. China is the largest producer of vitamin C on Earth. Matter of fact, that the author of that book could only find one company in America that still made vitamin C. As I was going forward with referencing this study, I came across a 2011 report from the LA Times that reported that China was the predominant maker of many B vitamins, such as thiamine, riboflavin, and folic acid. So odds are, if you take a multivitamin, odds are your multivitamin has ingredients which were sourced from China and shipped here to America and elsewhere. And I'm actually in the process of trying to find more recent statistics. I've reached out to different agencies to see if I can find more recent statistics. So I apologize for giving you something from 2011. If I come up with anything more recent, and I hope to in the near future, I'll definitely be talking about it here and on my website. Now, the New Hope Network is a trade organization for the dietary supplement industry. And in 2011, they reported that over 60% of all dietary supplement ingredients now came from China. That's 2011. Is it the same now? Is it less now? Again, I'm looking into this. Again, I'll report as I find it. As I was finding this, as I sourcing this episode out, I actually even uncovered a website which puts American supplement makers in touch with Chinese supplement ingredient manufacturers. There's even a website out there that supplement companies can reach out to Chinese supplement makers, ingredient makers, and get together with them. Again, it is what it is. Again, I'm frustrated as you may be here, just listening to me right now. That same year in 2011, that New Hope Network I mentioned, they published the results of a survey. They wanted to know if Americans cared about where their supplements came from. They surveyed 1,000 people, and they showed, no surprise here, I think, most people do in fact care that their dietary supplement ingredients were made outside of America. And that does apparently influence their buying choices. Some people may say, I'm not going to buy a supplement that's made here or there or there or there. Again, they may be more comfortable with, say, for instance, supplements that are made from ingredients, say, made here in America, for instance, or maybe in London, for instance. Okay, so the country of origin of these ingredients does appear to play a role in the buying choices of individuals. And also, the survey also realized, again, this goes back to 2011, that most people did not know that most of the ingredients in supplements came from China. So again, that's very telling, again, for the dietary supplement industry. They know this. They've known this for a while, and yet they're still doing business in China. Again, as this gets out to the public, this may impact their bottom line as people start thinking about where ingredients are coming from. That survey went on to say that over 60% of people said they would be less likely to buy a Chinese-sourced dietary supplement ingredient. In other words, ingredients that come from that country. 60% of people said they'd be less likely to buy it. So again, bottom line for supplement companies is hopefully they're diversifying which countries they're getting their ingredients from. So again, if 60% of the ingredients in dietary supplements come from one country, China, that means that for us who take dietary supplements, and I am one of them, it's going to be very difficult to avoid ingredients coming from China. Again, for some people that may be an issue. When I find out more recent statistics, I will be reporting on them. But if it does appear to be a lot, and I've heard different podcasts say something similar to the effect that it is a large percent of ingredients that do come from China. So if all this does matter to you and you're saying to yourself, what can I do about this? I would say that the best thing and the easiest thing to do is call the companies and ask them. Ask the companies, what countries do you get your ingredients from? And again, any quality company would have no problem telling you they get their ingredients from Mexico or the Bahamas or China or Canada, etc. And then the other thing I would say to them, when you do call them is, can you provide me the results of your independent laboratory testing for quality? Again, quality dietary supplement companies will be doing their own independent batch testing on ingredients to make sure they contain what they say as well as the dosage that they say as well. So they always want to cover their behind. So quality companies aren't just going to accept things from other countries and throw them into capsules and powders. They're going to do their own spot checking to make sure that things are as they do appear on the label. So again, if all this bothers you, call the companies, speak up. Again, who knows where all this might lead? Maybe companies will start, doing business more with companies and maybe even starting up supplement ingredient companies in America. Who knows where all this will lead? But again, I thought these two stories were very important to talk about because I don't see them talked about too much. The drug China connection is starting to get some publicity. I really don't hear anybody talking about the dietary supplement China connection. I do personally view the drug connection more seriously than supplements, to be perfectly honest with you, because most of us choose to take dietary supplements, but the people who take medications, they have to take medications for their health reasons. So again, I do view the drug issue, the drug connection, more seriously than the supplement issue, but again, I bring it up because I know not everybody feels the same way. So again, call them if you have any qualms and questions, and I'm sure quality companies would be very glad to discuss their quality control and the countries they get their supplement ingredients from. And that now leads us to number 4 in my list of 4 health headlines. This one you may have seen on the news. It made headlines pretty much all over the world, as far as I could tell. I've titled it, "Can You Go Blind from a Bad Diet?" I first learned about this from a report on NPR, but it's since been picked up by pretty much every other news outlet in America, maybe the world. Somebody did go blind from eating a lot of junk food. This is actually based on a clinical report. The doctor's titled report, "Blindness Caused by a Junk Food Diet." Boy, if that don't get your attention, nothing will. So I've read this report, and here's a synopsis of what happened. This occurred in the United Kingdom, in the UK. 14-year-old boy, he is experiencing some fatigue. His parents take him to the doctor. The doctors do some blood tests. They notice he's a little low in B12, and they give him some B12 shots. The parents tell the doctor he's a very finicky, very picky eater. The boy purposely avoids certain foods. He doesn't like the texture and the taste of certain foods. And his diet is essentially made up of what they call junk food. And basically it's processed carbs, French fries, potato chips, sausage, cold cuts, like ham and stuff like that. Again, they give him B12 shots, send him on his way. About a year later, this kid starts to lose his hearing. His bones begin to break down. He begins to get osteopenia, the beginning stages of osteoporosis, brittle bone disease. And then he begins to lose his eyesight. By the time this kid is 17, he is legally blind. What the heck is going on here? Well, the doctors then diagnosed him with what is called nutritional optic neuropathy. Nutritional optic neuropathy. I've never heard of this one either, but essentially this is damage to the optic nerve of our eyes caused by nutrient deficiencies. And the idea is that the foods this kid was eating, again, potato chips, sausage, stuff like that, lacked the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients that he needed to maintain his eyesight, as well as his bones and other things, and his hearing, because all that started to go downhill as well. Once this nutritional optic neuropathy condition was recognized, the doctors started giving him vitamin supplements, and while that did seem to help a little tiny bit, it didn't stop the issue. His optic nerve is still largely, mostly irreversibly damaged. From what I can tell, this kid is still legally blind right now, and it is horrible to even imagine something like this could happen. As I looked more into this, I came across that some medical authorities were speculating that this kid may have suffered from an eating disorder, a relatively new eating disorder that most people probably have never heard of, me included, called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. I'll say that again because that's a mouthful. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Again, this is basically science talk for the fact that people with this avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, they don't like certain foods. Basically, they have a kind of a heightened sensitivity to certain textures. They don't like certain textures of foods, and maybe they even have a fear of eating certain foods. And that's one thing that people have speculated this kid may not have had, because it's said that even since elementary school, he wasn't eating a lot of what we would normally call healthy foods. He only stuck with what he liked, which again was a very narrow field of nutrition. Again, sausage and ham and potato chips and French fries and stuff like that. It's not known technically if this kid has this disorder. As far as I could tell, he wasn't officially diagnosed with it, but it is very interesting to note that even after this kid lost his eyesight, he did not change the way he ate. He still continued eating the same way. To me, that says something, because I gotta say that if somebody said to me, Joe, you're losing your eyesight because you're eating a bunch of junk food, I would change my intake of food. I would eat more fruits and veggies, etc., in the hopes of changing things. This kid didn't. And so it's possible he does have this disorder. Again, I couldn't tell for sure, but I got to think something as serious as losing your vision would be an impetus enough to change your diet. So again, very, very sad. I do want to point out that nutritional optic neuropathy is a super rare condition, especially in developed countries like the UK and America. I can tell you that I have never, ever heard of anything happening like this before. Again, so I got to think that this is a 1 in a million shot of this ever occurring, maybe even again. And so I don't want people to get the impression that everybody who eats a bunch of junk food is going to go blind. I really don't think that's the case, because I'm sure that most of us growing up did in fact eat a lot of junk food. I know I did, and we didn't go blind. So then this really does appear to be a very rare phenomenon. And again, it's a testament that how resilient the human body is. It really is almost like a Timex, as they used to say in an old commercial. Timex, it takes a licking and keeps on ticking. The same thing's true for us. It really does appear to take a lot of screwing things up to mess up our biochemistry, and that's true especially when we're young. So it's not really so much the fact that this kid was eating, potato chips and French fries. I think it's more the fact that he wasn't eating, fruits and veggies and beans and seeds and stuff like that, things that we would probably mostly call pretty much healthy. And so you can still eat, potato chips and stuff like that, if you like, but again, we also got to get some other foods in our diet to provide a more broader spectrum of nutrients. Again, it appears that this kid was not getting those broad spectrum of nutrients that his body needed to stay healthy. So this is, an extremely sad and I think a worst case scenario that, could happen if we don't at least get some healthy foods in our diet. Again, I do think it's very rare, but I do think it's also a wake-up call for people who are not eating any of these foods. Again, I think it's rare, but again, if you're going to eat potato chips and stuff like that, have a salad once in a while. You can't go wrong with that for the most part. Now, if you have kids and you're saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm afraid for my kids," again, I do think this is very rare. I've never heard of nutritional optic neuropathy ever happening before. We probably may never hear of this ever happening again. But again, if you're trying to get your kids to eat better, again, one thing I would point out is, again, if the kids are young, let's try to introduce a whole wide array of foods, fruits and veggies and beans when they're young. Try to get them used to eating a whole bunch of different foods when they're young. The earlier we can introduce newer foods, I think the more likely they'll be able to eat those foods, as they grow up. Now, another thing I would say is, remember that people in general, not just kids, but people tend to buy into the benefits of things. So don't just say, here's some broccoli, eat it. Focus on the benefits of the broccoli and how that can help them get stronger bones and get stronger spinach. Again, when I was growing up, I always remember watching, Popeye growing up, and Popeye would eat spinach, and spinach would make him strong, and he can do all kinds of stuff with that. We don't see those messages anymore. Unfortunately, we don't. I wish we did. So focusing on the benefits, I think, is a good thing. For instance, one of the things I'll tell people, is that, when you look at the colors of the foods, the orange, the purples, the greens, the yellows, the colors are the antioxidants in those foods. Those antioxidants neutralize bad things like free radicals, which are implicated in many diseases. So the colors are the antioxidants, and it's the colors that protect those plants, those foods. And when we eat the plants, we then get those powers too. We get the protection that they offered those plant-based foods. So focus on the benefits of those foods, and I think that'll help kids get them, be more likely to eat them. And on sidebar here, since I kind of mentioned the benefits of things, and Popeye got me thinking, every time I go, supermarket shopping, I always ask myself this: how come I've never seen Batman on a bag of broccoli? How come I've never seen Spider-Man on a bag of spinach? I've seen these characters maybe on cereal boxes, but never fruits and veggies and beans and seeds and stuff like that. What the heck's up with that? Why in the world isn't, say, Big Broccoli reaching out to Disney, which owns the Marvel Universe, and saying, "Hey, Disney, is it okay if we put Batman on some broccoli?" I'm sure they would license out Batman and Spider-Man and all that, to, the fruits and veggie, industry. Why isn't that ever happening? I don't get that. Again, we don't even see Popeye anymore. And that was like the only time I ever see, a vegetable promoted on a cartoon. And while we're on the topic, again, another sidebar. I like sidebars, as you can tell. Why in the world don't I ever see people eating fruits and veggies in TV shows and movies? I see them smoking. I see them having sex. I don't see them eating salads. What the heck's up with that? People, especially kids, emulate those individuals that they like. And so I think if we see, Batman eating broccoli, or Spider-Man eating spinach, or Captain America eating a salad or something like that, I think that's going to give a subliminal message to kids. Why don't I see this? I think Hollywood needs to step the heck up and do something about this. And again, they may be like, "Oh, we don't want to do any, change social." They do it all the time, whether they know it or not. Again, I know I'm getting on another tangent, and it's not not something I want to do here. I don't like to bloviate so much. I like to keep to the facts, but I do think that Hollywood, should step the heck up and do something to try to, encourage a more healthy diet in people. And again, it wouldn't be hard to have a 3-second scene where, say Batman is eating a salad once in a while. Okay, I'll get off the sidebar. Again, one other thing you might want to try with kids, a couple more actually, smoothies. Again, I sometimes talk about how I like to put lima beans in my smoothies and stuff like that. You're never going to taste them. You throw in some strawberries, some blueberries, maybe you throw in some chocolate protein powder like I do. I can drink anything that's covered in chocolate. So again, you can make smoothies taste really, really good. So kids can learn to like these foods when they're younger. And then why not juice these foods as well? Not juice from a supermarket, but you can get a juicer, and you can make some really good tasting juice. You can juice spinach, yeah, but you can throw a couple apples in there. So you can get juice, get this produce pretty inexpensively at fruit stands and stuff like that, or probably in your neighborhood. And then lastly, one thing I'd point out, and I don't know if this actually happened with this kid in the UK, is why not a multivitamin or a phytonutrient supplement? To my knowledge, this kid was given multivitamins after he started losing his vision. Why wasn't he taking anything like that before? I don't get that. They gave him vitamin B12 shots, but why not just a simple little multivitamin? Who knows? That may have corrected all these issues. We don't know the answer, obviously. And a phytonutrient supplement. Phytonutrient supplements are simply just basically, desiccated or dried up fruits and veggies in a powdered form. They're powdered, they're capsules. You can mix them up with water and drink them, or, you can take capsules. There's a lot of these products out there. And again, these phytonutrients are definitely can be used by your body to stay healthy. So again, there's different ways at which you can get kids to increase their intake of healthy foods. Hopefully some of that helped you. If you were wondering, I got a kid who's a picky eater, realize the kid's most likely not going to go blind. But again, I'm all for eating better if you possibly can. So there are my 4 health headlines. Hopefully you've gleaned some good information from them. If you need to get a hold of me, or have any questions, or maybe even have some ideas for future health headline segments, drop me an email at either one of my websites, joe-cannon.com, joe-cannon.com, or supplementclarity.com, and I will be glad to take a look at your emails. And with that, I will leave you with the quote of the week, which goes like this: "The only way to do great work is to love what you do." Steve Jobs. He definitely loved what he did. You got to give him that. So guys, until next time, I'm Joe Cannon. Go out, have a great day, and make a difference.